Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be the campaign update for the game I ran last night. So the party had two options as far as quests to take. I had them choose without introducing it in the story, and then I threw in the story part. They could go after some whatever's closed a trade route in the mountains, which ends up being described as some ice giants. And then they could go after a fire worm, hunting down a beast. And they picked the hunting the beast. So they started by leaving after rolling up their money, they started by leaving town to the northwest to head towards the area of incidences. Two other parties were created at the same time as my groups to head on this quest. There was one that had horses. They were a little bit better equipped than the party is on just a regular equipment basis. And then there was another one that's behind the party by about a day that is all on foot, just like for the most part the whole party. The party consists of three goblins, a gargoyle, two gargoyles, and a lizard man. I had 4 players, and only 2 of them wanted to run 2 characters this game. The goblins, 2 of the goblins I believe are wizards. One's like a martial wizard and one's like a wizard thief. And then the other goblin is a thief. And then the gargoyle is a brute, of course. Both of them are just like fighters. So they begin traveling west, and it takes them 3 days before they start to get close to the territories that they need to be aware of. And at this point, the weather's different in this area. Say it is just the beginnings of fall, like it is now, but they're in the Canada area, so it's a little bit colder than where I am. But this area that they just entered just had a light dusting of snow, and the dusting of snow as the days progress gets just slightly thicker and slightly thicker and slightly thicker. It's not a heavy snow, and all it would need is just a quick temperature bump to like 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and all this snow would be gone. The party finds a campsite that looks like it was just abandoned. They begin searching through the stuff, then they move on, then they spot something in a tree, turns out to be a owl watching them. And then after that, they find an area where there's been combat, and it's about 100 yards away from their campsite. They start looking around it, and it's a slightly big area. There are prints, there's indentions in the ground. Snow's not around this area. The indentions look like spears that have been stuck in the ground, or staffs that have been stuck in the ground, but there's no wood that's in the ground in these locations. They find bits of melted silver and copper and iron. They don't find any bodies, and they don't find and they find a tree that has been set on fire and turned to charcoal. The party then starts poking around. They end up finding a tunnel. One of the goblins finds a tunnel by accident, steps on a softened area of earth, and falls through. He only took like a handful of points of damage. I think 3 was the maximum damage, and I think that's what he took. Then the other goblin, the goblin thief, started poking around trying to find, because that tunnel that he fell into was just a half-collapsed tunnel. The goblin finds an entrance to a tunnel that heads towards the tree. So they go that way, and they travel in the tunnel for about 20 minutes, but at the 15-minute mark, they're having a hard time breathing. The tunnel starts to curve up, but looks like it's sealed off. They begin poking upwards with a crowbar. I think it was the gargoyle that did this, and then he ended up covered in earth for a couple of rounds until the party could free him. He took no damage from it, but when he got covered in earth, it opened up the air, so everyone else had an easier time breathing. They surfaced, they're at a lake, a little pond. I think something that's at least the size of a football field. The lake's frozen over. The ground seems to be covered in snow, and by frozen over, I mean just a really thin layer of ice over it. They begin playing around with the water, trying to test it out and see what they can about it. And then at some point they start looking around the area in more detail, and they find that other party that was ahead of them is coming this way towards the lake, and they're in an open field about 500 feet away, and they hear this eruption of combat, and they see a giant silhouetted worm thing in the steam as the snow melts. And there's just lots of sounds of combat and death, especially the horses are dying quickly. The party rushes up, and by the time they get there was 8 people. There's 5 left of that original group when the party arrives. The creature, they start to see what the creature is. It is a long serpentine-like creature with bug legs. It has big bulbous bug eyes, and its back is red hot at the moment. And it is just tearing into these guys that it's fighting. It swallows another guy whole, and then the party begins to figure out how they're going to fight it. They end up attacking it in a couple of different ways, doing an impressive amount of damage for a round of combat. And then in the meantime, it kills another one of the NPC group, and another one of those NPCs ends up 3 of those NPCs end up surviving this combat, and the 4th one dies from his wounds essentially after the combat's over. The party, the 2 gargoyles, as the creature's trying to retreat from the impressive amount of damage they dealt to it, they pick up a giant boulder and try to drop it on it. And I had everyone roll initiative because someone was trying to blind it. Someone had shot the goblin. The goblin rogue used the crossbow to blind the creature in one eye permanently. It was an impressive critical. And but the other goblin mage was trying to use dazzle on it and blind it psychically for a good bit of time. He gets up there, the creature's burrowing. He casts that, blinds half the people that are in melee combat with it. Blinds it, but the wizard himself's not blind. The gargoyles drop this giant boulder on it, think something about the size of a BMW Beetle. So something that'll do an impressive amount of damage. And no one knows if it actually hurt it or not until they investigate later, and they find that there is some blood there. There might be a piece of its chitinous armor there, but nothing significant. So the creature had got away. They're sitting there figuring out what to do. They're helping the NPC group. They dig a hole to bury the dead, and then after that they they see this huge column of steam erupt from where the pond was. When they get there, this red hot bug is now blue and white, no longer red hot. And then they see it, as they begin to figure out how they're going to fight it, they see it burrow down and escape. After resting, they end up going towards the town that they're here to help and protect. And that town, as they're moving, that town shows a column of smoke in the distance. And it takes them until almost nightfall to get there. When the party gets there, they notice that 2 houses were burning to the ground out of the 7 in this town, and then 1 had been completely smashed through. So 3 of the 7 houses have been destroyed. The Jarl of this town's been eaten. One of his 2 personal guards is dead. The other one's injured with heavy burn wounds. And the town's just trying to pick itself up and assess the damage and take care of the injured when the party gets there. The party asks which direction it went, and it actually stayed on land for its travel this time instead of burrowing. And they point off into a direction, so the party begins following it. They start going uphill as they follow this, and it's nighttime. And they follow it for 7 miles. 5 of it, there's a clear trail of melted snow everywhere. And after about that, they stop seeing melted snow, but they see the indentions like a quarterstaff or a spear has been in the snow. They follow that for another mile, and then all of a sudden the surroundings is extra quiet. At this point, the party takes extra precautions. The gargoyles fly up high, see if they can see the creature. And surprisingly enough, they can. It is in a clearing, and it is wrapped around a old obelisk. Think freestanding stones that the Druids or the Celts would have had, with inscriptions all over it, of course. And it's wrapped around that. The party ambushes it with a good round of combat. And in that, they end up doing more than half its health and damage, surprisingly. The creature retaliates and severely injures another of the NPCs and kills an NPC. And then the gargoyles push over the obelisk onto the creature. And in this being the second round of combat, in this round the creature is killed, but I let every player, without telling them the creature was killed, have their turn to do something to it and attack it. And then on its action, it rose up, shook, and fell over dead. They cut off its head to take back. The guardsman of the Jarl of the town they were sent to help hands them the ring of the Jarl as a proof that the town approves of their success. And then the party makes it back to their town about 4 days after that. Once they're at their town, they get a big celebratory feast for being the heroes that have killed a fire worm. And they get their appropriate reward. They get a armband made of silver worth, I believe it was 100 silver. And then they get 2,000 silver each, and they each get a +1 damage broadsword. The sword itself was worth 1,000 gold, or 1,000 silver in this system. So they had more than enough funds from this adventure. Then they started inquiring about the next adventure, but I called it quits for the night right there. So the next adventure will be available next time we play. If this was entertaining, if this helped anybody, put it in the comments below. Until we meet again.